Hello, welcome to another lesson. Today's learning goal is that I can use the properties of operations to add and subtract integers, fractions, and decimals. Today what we're going to focus on, however, is not integers, it is not decimals, it is fractions, okay? So this lesson is all going to be about using fractions and adding and subtracting negative and positive forms of those. So let's go ahead and try the first one out. Negative 1 3/4 minus negative 2 1/5. Remember that we said subtraction is the addition of the opposite, right? So we got here, what this really is negative 1 3/4 keep, change, and change this into a positive. So we get 2 1/5. Okay. Because the absolute value of 1 3/4 is less than 2 1/5, our answer is going to be positive. So we're going to first change this into an improper fraction, negative 7/4, because that is 1 times 4 plus 3, plus 11/5. And as we know, we cannot add or subtract fractions unless they have common denominators. So we're going to get common denominators by multiplying by 5 over 5, a form of 1, times 4 over 4. When we do that, remember that we are multiplying with a negative, and then positive times a negative is negative. Oops, excuse me. Negative. Let me get that back. There we go. Negative 35 over 20 plus 44 over 20. Negative 35 plus 44 is going to be 9 over 20. Okay. And that's our final answer. And that kind of makes sense because negative 1 3/4 plus 2 1/5 is going to be a little bit more than 0, because this is close to negative 2, this is close to 2, but this is a little bit more than 2, this is a little less than 2. So negative 9/20 makes sense. Okay. I want to show you guys something. Some students like to use the partial method, where we take parts of each one of these parts, the whole numbers, subtract them, and then the fraction parts and subtract them. That doesn't really work so well here, okay? And let me show you why. Because if we were to do that, we would first change both of these fractions to common denominators. We get negative 1 15/20. We're still going to change this into an addition of the opposite, so plus 2 4/20. Okay. Here we got negative 1 plus 2, so that's going to be 1. And here we have 15 plus 4, which is 19. But that's not what we got last time. Last time we got 9 over 20. Here we would have gotten 19 over 20. The issue here is that this is a negative 15. And even if we were to account for that, okay, so let's account for that. So that's a negative 15. What we would then have is negative 15 plus 4, which is negative 11. Negative 11. So we got 1 and negative 11. How do you even write that? Negative 11/20. You can do this. That's perfectly fine. But what you have to realize is that you have to combine this 1 with this negative 11 over 20th. So then that becomes 20 over 20 plus negative 11 over 20, which would then at that point get us our final answer of 9/20. But notice how that takes a lot of mental gymnastics. Okay, Yes, that does work, okay, as long as you remember that this is negative 15 and this is 4, and then once you have a negative part, if you have a negative part and a positive part, then you need to combine those by adding them together. But that kind of gets a little bit difficult. You can try that, it can work, but I prefer to do it the more standard method of changing it to improper fraction and then doing the operations with it. Okay. So let's try this one. Let's start off with 4/3, and look at this. It's already an improper fraction for us. This is the same thing as 1 1/3. Okay, minus 2 4/5. So 1 1/3 minus 2 4/5. I'm only writing this out like this because I want to make an estimate before we get started. 2 4/5. So the estimate we should say is going to be negative because we're subtracting more than 1 1/3. So this is close to 1, this is close to 3, so we'll say close to negative 2. Because 1 minus 3 is negative 2. So let's go ahead and change these into improper fractions, one of which is already done for us. So we get 4/3 minus 14 fifths. We are going to multiply to get common denominators, and we're going to multiply this side by 5/5. 5/5. Multiply this by 3/3. We get a common denominator of 15. So we got 15 and 20 minus 14 times 3 is 42 over 15. Subtraction is addition of the opposite. So we got, I'll change this to addition and make this a subtraction or a negative. 20 plus negative 42 gets us negative because of this is greater than this. This 42, the absolute value of 42 is negative 42 is greater than the absolute value of 20. So it's negative 22 over 15. And as a mixed fraction, that gets us our final answer of negative 1 7/15. Okay. Which is close to our estimate of negative 2, so we should feel pretty good about that. Okay. Let's try this one right here. So we already have an addition problem right here, so what we need to do is change it to improper fractions. Negative 16 over 3 plus, this is 24 plus 3 is 27, 27 over 4. Again, we're going to multiply to get common denominators, so we got multiplying this by 4 over 4 to get a common denominator of 12, since 12 is the least common multiple of 3 and 4, and multiplying by 3 over 3 to get the same thing. When we do that, we get 4 times negative 16, which gets us negative 64 over 12, plus 27 times 3 is 81 over 12. Oh, we forgot to make an estimate. Let's pretend like we haven't gotten this far. A good estimate. This number is close to 7. This number is close to negative 5. So again, our estimate should be close to 2. Okay. Then, going back down here, we need to add these. And when we do, negative 64 plus 81, we're going to have a positive number. And when we do that, we get 17 over 12, which gets us our final answer once we convert it into a mixed number, 1 5/12. And again, pretty doggone close to our estimate.
Later, he gets the rebound, passes it to the man, shoots it, and boom goes the dynamite.
So here we have negative 3 2/3 plus negative 4 1/6. So here, we're going to again make it improper fraction. We get negative 11 over 3. Excuse me. Plus 4 times 6, negative 24. Plus another negative 1, so that's negative 25 over 6. Oh, estimate. So this is close to negative 4. This is close to negative 4. So our answer should be close to negative 8. So let's see if that is true. Okay. The only one that we need to change is this fraction because the least common multiple of 6 and 3 is in fact 6. So we're going to multiply this by 2 over 2. We get negative 22 over 6 plus negative 25 over 6, negative 47 over 6, which gets us our final answer. 6 goes into 47 7 times. We got negative 7. 6 times 7 is 42, and 42 gives us a remainder 5, and 5 sixths. Okay. Go ahead and try this one on your own. So, subtraction is addition of the opposite, so we're going to do negative 1 and 2/5. Change this to a plus, change this to a positive, so we got 5 and 3/4, which means our answer is going to be positive. So let's do an estimate. This is close to negative 1, this is close to 6, so we're going to say close to 5. Change this into an improper fraction. We get negative 7/5 plus 23 over 4. Get common denominators. Multiply by 4 over 4. Multiply by 5 over 5. Then what we get is, keep the green actually, 4 times 7 is 28, so we get negative 28 over 20 plus 115 over 20. Okay, and so then we have to add these two together. When we do that, we get, what is that going to be? 87 over 20, which gets us our final answer when mixed form, 4 and 7/20, which is close to our original prediction.